For 18 years, Colonel David Renner ran one of the tightest logistics operations in the United States Army. For 6 of those years, he was also running a private business, one that funneled 35 million taxpayer dollars into accounts that didn't officially exist. On a humid morning in March 2026, FBI agents and Army Criminal Investigation Division officers walked onto a military installation with a federal search warrant and walked out with enough evidence to end a career, a command, and very possibly a man's freedom. Colonel David Renner had the kind of resume that gets a man fast-tracked: 2 combat deployments, a Bronze Star, a reputation among the soldiers under his command as fair, demanding, and impossible to rattle. By 2020, he was given command of base logistics and procurement at a mid-sized installation in the southeastern United States, a job that put him in charge of hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts every single year. Fuel, equipment, construction, maintenance, everything that kept a base of that size running moved through his office at some point. It's a job built on trust because it has to be. No procurement officer can personally inspect every delivery, audit every invoice, verify every contractor's paperwork line by line. The system runs on the assumption that the people signing off on multi-million-dollar contracts are doing it in good faith. Renner understood that assumption better than anyone, and eventually, he decided to use it. He'd spent 2 decades watching how the Army's contracting system actually worked, not how it looked on paper. He knew which approvals got real scrutiny and which ones moved through as routine. He knew that a base commander's signature carried a weight that nobody downstream questioned, and somewhere along the way, that knowledge stopped being something he used to keep the system honest and started being something he used to bend it. It didn't start as a scheme. It rarely does. In 2020, a mid-sized construction firm, we'll call it Harlow Construction Group, won a contract to renovate 2 barracks buildings on base. Routine work, properly bid, nothing unusual on paper. But over the following year, Harlow kept winning. Fencing repairs, HVAC replacement, a new motor pool facility, each contract individually defensible, but together an unusually consistent pattern of one contractor outbidding every competitor year after year on jobs across completely different specialties. That kind of pattern doesn't normally draw attention on its own. Construction firms sometimes do get good at winning bids. Better estimators, better relationships with subcontractors, leaner overhead. There are a dozen boring explanations that would have closed this out before it ever became a federal case. But in late 2024, an Army CID auditor doing a routine review of base contracting noticed something that didn't sit right. Harlow's bids weren't just competitive, they were suspiciously close to the government's internal cost estimates, numbers that were supposed to be confidential until contracts were awarded. Somebody, somewhere, was leaking the number Harlow needed to beat. It's a small detail, the kind of thing that's easy to write off as a coincidence the first time you see it. A close bid happens. 2 close bids start to look unusual. By the 4th or 5th contract in a row landing within a percentage point of the internal estimate, the auditor wasn't calling it luck anymore. If you want to see where this leak actually led, make sure you're subscribed, because what investigators found next turned a contracting irregularity into a federal kickback case. Army CID opened a quiet inquiry in January 2025. The kind of investigation that doesn't involve raids or warrants yet, just paperwork, interviews, and a careful look at who had access to those sealed cost estimates before each bid went out. The list of people with that access was short: procurement officers, a handful of contracting specialists, and exactly 1 person with the authority to both see the estimates and approve the contracts that followed: Colonel David Renner. CID investigators couldn't move on a base commander based on access alone. Access isn't proof. Half the people on that short list had access and nothing to do with it. They needed to show money actually changed hands, not just opportunity, but payment. So they did what financial investigators always do in cases like this. They followed the paper trail. Renner's official financial disclosures showed nothing unusual: a colonel's salary, a modest home, a couple of retirement accounts that tracked exactly where you'd expect them to be after 18 years of service. Nothing that screamed corruption. But Harlow Construction's corporate filings told a different story. Buried in their expense reports was a recurring 6-figure payment to a consulting firm. Meridian Strategic Advisors, for vaguely described logistics consulting services. No deliverables attached, no reports, no invoices that described what specifically Meridian had actually done for that money. Meridian Strategic Advisors had one employee. It was registered to a P.O. box in a different state entirely, and its sole listed officer was Renner's brother-in-law. That's the moment a contracting irregularity becomes a federal corruption case. Army CID can investigate fraud within the military justice system, but bribery involving federal contracts and a federal officer crosses jurisdictional lines, which is when the FBI's Public Corruption Unit formally joined the case in April 2025. From that point forward, it was a joint operation. Two agencies working the same target from two directions. Army CID handled the military side, verifying Renner's exact role in contract approvals, reviewing classified procurement records, and quietly interviewing junior staff without tipping off the colonel that he was now the subject of the inquiry. The FBI built the financial case from the outside, subpoenaing Meridian's bank records, Harlow's corporate accounts, and eventually, Renner's brother-in-law's personal finances. What they found was a laundering structure dressed up as a consulting arrangement. Harlow paid Meridian for services. Meridian transferred a portion of that money into a trust account benefiting Renner's Children's Education Fund. Another portion went toward a recreational property purchase that never appeared on Renner's mandatory federal financial disclosure forms, a separate violation on its own, even before anyone proved a single dollar of it was a bribe. Over 5 years, Harlow had won government contracts worth roughly $210 million. Investigators calculated that $35 million of that total represented inflated, padded, or entirely unnecessary work. Line items added specifically to generate excess profit margin that could then be kicked back through Meridian. The actual bribe payments traced to Renner came to just under $4 million across 5 years. The $35 million figure represents the total value of the inflated contracting scheme his approvals enabled. Not the bribe amount itself, but the cost to taxpayers of running it for half a decade without anyone catching it. If a story like this is the kind you want more of, hit that subscribe button now, because the raid itself is where this gets serious. Going after a sitting base commander isn't something the FBI or Army CID do lightly. There's a reason corruption cases against high-ranking officers take months, sometimes years to build. The evidentiary bar has to be airtight because the consequences, for the officer, for unit morale, for public trust in military leadership, are severe either way, and there's no walking it back if investigators get it wrong. Investigators spent the back half of 2025 building a case file that could survive scrutiny in federal court. That meant forensic accounting tracing every dollar from Harlow through Meridian into accounts connected to Renner and his family, a process that took weeks just to map out the shell structure, let alone prove intent. It meant interviews with junior procurement officers, several of whom described being instructed by Renner to fast-track Harlow's paperwork without the usual secondary review, a detail that on its own meant little. Stacked against everything else, it meant a great deal, and it meant a search of public records that confirmed the recreational property, a lakefront cabin purchased in 2023, had never appeared on Renner's mandatory federal disclosure forms. By itself, a paperwork failure. Combined with everything else, a pattern of concealment. By December 2025, prosecutors had enough for a sealed indictment. A federal grand jury returned charges in January 2026. Bribery of a public official, honest services wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and false statements on a federal disclosure form. The indictment stayed sealed for several weeks while investigators planned the most delicate part of the entire operation, executing a search warrant on an active military installation on a sitting commander without tipping him off in advance and without compromising base security in the process. March 2026. Early morning. 2 coordinated actions, executed within minutes of each other in 2 different states. Standard protocol, so neither target has time to warn the other or destroy records. At the base itself, FBI agents, working alongside Army CID and with sign-off from the installation's senior command, entered Renner's office and quarters. As a serving officer, the process required careful coordination with military authorities to preserve chain of custody and avoid disrupting base operations during the search. Renner was read his rights and taken into custody without incident. No resistance, no statement beyond confirming his own identity. 200 miles away, a separate team executed a warrant at the home of Renner's brother-in-law, the listed officer of Meridian Strategic Advisors. That search turned up something investigators hadn't been certain still existed: a physical ledger kept off any company computer, tracking which contracts had been padded, by how much, and what portion flowed back through Meridian. It was, almost word for word, the financial trail the forensic accountants had already reconstructed digitally, except now it had handwriting on it, dates and initials in a hand that matched verified samples. And handwriting is a lot harder to explain away in front of a jury than a spreadsheet. By that afternoon, the base issued a brief statement confirming a senior officer had been relieved of command pending federal proceedings. By evening, the story was already moving through national news, and by the next morning, reporters were asking the one question that mattered most: how does a scheme like this run for 5 years on a U.S. military installation without anyone catching it sooner? If you want to see how a case like this typically plays out once it reaches trial, subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up. Within 72 hours, the Department of Defense's Office of Inspector General opened a broader review of every contract Harlow Construction had been awarded across multiple installations, not just the one Renner commanded. If the same consulting firm laundering pattern showed up elsewhere, this stops being a single corrupt officer and becomes a systemic vulnerability in how the military structures procurement oversight nationwide. Renner was formally charged with bribery of a public official, honest services wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and false statements on a federal disclosure form. Combined, prosecutors noted the charges carry significant potential prison exposure, though, as always, any actual sentence would be determined by a federal judge applying the U.S. sentencing guidelines, not by the charges themselves. His brother-in-law was charged separately with money laundering conspiracy. According to court filings, he is cooperating with prosecutors, testimony that's expected to be central to proving Renner knowingly directed the scheme, rather than simply benefiting from a relative's business dealings on the side. Harlow Construction's federal contracting privileges were suspended pending the outcome of the broader DoD review. The company's executives have not been charged as of the most recent filings, though investigators have not ruled out additional charges as the Inspector General's review continues to widen. As of now, no trial date has been set. Renner remains in custody pending a detention hearing, and the base has named an interim commander while the investigation continues into how deep the contracting failures actually go. A base commander's signature is supposed to mean something. It's the point where a contract stops being a bid and becomes a binding use of taxpayer money. Money meant to support the people serving under that exact signature, the same soldiers who trusted the chain of command to spend it honestly. That's what makes a case like this land differently than ordinary fraud. It's not just stolen money, it's a breach of the one chain of command that's supposed to be beyond question. The kind of breach that doesn't just cost taxpayers, it costs trust that takes a long time to rebuild. Real federal cases, documented facts, no noise, that's the standard this channel runs on. This one's a composite, built from the patterns that keep showing up in real cases like it, the kind of scheme that hides in plain sight until somebody finally asks why one contractor keeps winning every single time. If this one hit different, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in the next case file.